I think we have a small enough group that let's go around and do quick introductions if you don't mind. So if you want to give your name and what organization you're with, and kind of what your role is as it relates to emergency preparedness. So just quick around the table introductions. I'll call on people since we have it gets confusing in these Brady Bunch tiles. So let's start with Valerie Magana.
Hi, I'm Valerie Magana. I'm with the Red Cross. I'm brand new to the Red Cross, so this is a learning experience for me.
Great, thank you. Carrie Randall.
Hi there. I just started working with the Down Syndrome Association of Northwest Indiana. I'm a new board member, so just trying to immerse myself in everything and learn as much as I can.
Good, thanks for joining. Meredith Stillwell.
Yes, I'm Meredith Stoll. I'm with the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, and I'm the office manager.
Okay. Melissa Warren.
Hi, I actually don't have I'm not with any specific organization. I'm doing this to help my church be more prepared. I'm an RN in my area in Indiana, and I just want to make sure that we are prepared if an emergency occurs and know how to be a resource for the area around us.
Okay, well, churches are organizations that need this too. Erin Lane.
Hi, I am the communication and volunteer manager for the Boulevard of Chicago. I actually live in Northwest Indiana and am very familiar with the legacy, hence I'm here. I am currently working on a crisis communication manual for our organization.
Okay, great, thanks. And Sharon.
Good afternoon, Sharon Liggins. I'm with the Continuum of Care Network of Northwest Indiana, and here to learn more and to simply add to it, because we deal definitely with the populations that are at risk of homelessness and are homeless and will be impacted for any type of crisis that might come along.
Thanks, Sharon. Blossom. Blossom, are you there? You're muted. Well, we will come back to Blossom. Rose Seifert.
Hi, I'm Rose Seifert with Legacy Foundation, and I'm the office manager here.
All right, thank you. And Brianna Arthur. Yep. Brianna, are you there? You're muted.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brianna. I am the artistic director / school director of the South Shore Dance Alliance, and I'm excited to be here today to get some information. So thank you.
And Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Fizer. I'm Director of Marketing and Communications at Legacy.
Okay. I'm Kelly Ano. I'm the Vice President at Legacy. And then we have as our presenter today, Kristen Marlowe Kellerman, who is the Executive Director for the Northwest Indiana Red Cross. And Kristen actually came to Legacy in January and gave this ready rating training about emergency preparedness so long ago, right? As far as how we were thinking about emergency response and emergency preparedness. And and it was a great training. I received really good feedback afterwards. But interestingly enough, pandemic preparedness was not a major focus at the time. And so we had updated our plan at that time and really, and then as we went through everything in March and April, realized that we needed to look back and think about how we needed to change our plan, our emergency disaster plan, to actually incorporate some of what we were currently experiencing. And some of that also, cost money. We had to, invest in technology. We had to, invest in some things to have at the office and for staff. And so Legacy Foundation made some grants available for capacity building to include emergency preparedness for organizations. And so the grant that we have currently open is for emergency preparedness plans to cover emergency preparedness tools, the costs of being able to go virtual, to upgrade platforms and software, developing plans, any equipment that's needed to be able to actually implement and create your emergency preparedness plan. And what we're learning is that there's a lot of confusion over maybe what emergency preparedness plans are, what they should include. And so we've asked Kristen to come back and offer this training again. So thank you for coming back, Kristen. So for our grants, the final round is due September 10th. So just so you all are aware that we do have that funding available as you kind of think through what Kristen is talking about on the call today. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Kristen.
Hey, thanks, Kelly, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, as Kelly said, we did have a nice presentation at Legacy back in January, and then during the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, we did another online virtual training as well, just to get the information out, because as Kelly said, when we did the training back in January, we were focused on just overall emergency preparedness and organizations having an opportunity to get access to free resources. I'll continue to say the word free, but as we know, nothing is free. Here at the Red Cross, we do national fundraising for the opportunity to provide resources such as Ready Rating at no cost to you folks. So it doesn't come free, but it does come to no charge to you folks through our national philanthropic endeavors to make sure that resources like this can get down to, Melissa, I'm glad you brought up the mention about you're not affiliated with anybody. You actually are. Everybody in our community is. And it could be our child's daycare. It could be the church that we go to. There's room for everyone to increase their opportunity to have a more efficient, impactful, and positive outcome with their emergency action plan. So that's what we're going to talk about today. When we were focused on it in January, we were looking at resources and tools around things like active shooter training, because that was one of the things that everybody was looking at and everybody really needed to have more localized and individual resources at the church level, at the daycare level, at the small nonprofit level. So we focused a lot on that. And I was one of those folks that are like, oh, you know what, the storage of information and access to the building and, data IT needs, that was not top of mind because it was built into the program, which you'll see, but our eyes were on something else. And that's the beauty of an emergency action plan, is when you do a comprehensive emergency action plan, it allows your eyes to be on everything at the time in which you're planning and putting the foundation in place. Again, with these free resources and these free tools, it's an ever-evolving program for you. It's web-based, it's self-driven, so you guys are going to be owning the process for yourselves. But at the same time, you don't always have to have your eyes on everything, because once you've built the plan and you know how to execute that, you're ready when the disasters pop up. There's a reason why preparedness comes in front of response. When we say what the Red Cross does, we're a disaster preparedness and response organization, because you have a much stronger response when you prepare first. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to go through, we got about 26 slides we're going to walk through. Some are simplistic, some have a little more words to them. I'm going to share a lot of information with you, but at the end of this presentation, the reason everybody registered is so Legacy can send out the PowerPoint presentation. There's nothing proprietary in here. You're going to get a copy of this slideshow in a PowerPoint format, so you don't have to, worry about jotting down a whole bunch of notes. Kelly's going to go ahead and include my contact information, which will include an email address. So if you want one-on-one help on getting this set up and getting started, just reach out to me and we'll set up a one-on-one Zoom call and we'll walk you through the website and get you going. So right now, the best thing that you can do is just try and absorb the overarching, top line information. We can get into the details later, okay? And then Kelly, we're gonna go ahead and do questions along the way. If you want to throw them in the chat box, and Kelly and Erica are going to keep an eye on that. And then if it's going to come up later in the presentation, I'll just tell you, stay tuned. There's more to come. But if it's a question that's related to something specific that I don't go deep enough into, we want to address it right then. Okay. So let's get started. So can everybody see my screen before we jump right in? All right, Erica says we're good, so we're going to get going. So folks, we're going to talk about Ready Rating right now, readyrating.org. And disregard, I apologize, I pulled up the wrong one and it was too late to change it. This says prepared for the Lake County United Way. Everything that we're going to talk about at the bottom, everything that we're going to talk about, these slideshow presentations and things, we'll show you in the Resource Center. You have the opportunity to customize that for your organization, so you can take it out and do a presentation to all of your stakeholders as well. So we'll walk through that when we get to the Resource Center. So it's not just the fact that we've got social media and we've got a lot more connectivity to the news that's happening. Disasters are on the rise. There is an organization that just looks at decade-wise, because it's hard to look at one particular year. It doesn't give you a lot of the climate change information and a lot of the shifts that may happen. So when we take a look at disasters, we tend to take a look at a decade at a time. So we won't have the updated decade information until we close out all the data for 2020. What we do have is the data that says between 2001 and 2010, we had nearly 5 times more disasters than we did from 2091 to 2000. That's a huge increase. In that time, over 20 million, almost 21 million people were affected by a disaster in some way, versus only 4.5 million the prior decade. So we also do know that we anticipate, based on the numbers that we're seeing, that we're going to see a very significant increase from the previous decade to the one we're just coming out of. So what that tells us is we are having more frequent disasters, and we need to get even more prepared because we have a lot more at stake. We've got a lot more folks we're engaging and working with now than we were before, because our communities have gotten bigger through some of the networking that we have. Just the number of folks that are on this call, 10 years ago might not have had the opportunity to engage this way. So some of you might ask, what is a disaster in simplistic forms? A disaster includes floods, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, certainly includes this COVID that we're going through, a pandemic. This is the largest, most widespread ongoing disaster that we will see, or we have seen in modern history, affecting the most people, both nationally and internationally. So, COVID does bump to the top, but it's not something we have typically thought of when we've thought of disasters. We think of those hurricanes and the tsunamis and the wildfires. But as we understand now more than ever, this COVID pandemic puts a whole different light on what we need to be prepared for. There are other types of disasters, which would include cybersecurity issues. That is a disaster to entire markets and entire organizations. So we're going to cover that in this action plan. But when we talk about this emergency preparedness, we have a couple statistics that we need to consider when we look at the overall reason to make sure organizations are prepared. When we take a look at just the continuity of operations and keeping businesses open, one of the things that we talk about are the more at-risk communities, the communities in which there are transportation issues to get to work. There are folks that are working for an hourly wage without benefits, and they don't have an opportunity to take time off to care for their children. Those are very vulnerable folks. And when we consider that, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, small businesses represent more than 99% of all employers. That's a big number. These large corporations that you hear about that have all of these amazing benefits and support for their employers, that's not the vast majority of the folks in need when a disaster strikes. It's the folks that are employed with this 99% of all employers. That includes our houses of worship. That includes our nonprofit agencies. That includes the small mom and pops on the corner, which is the only place some of our clients have the opportunity to go utilize their SNAP credits, or the childcare on the corner that is within walking distance. That's the only way a single mom has an opportunity to get to work. Those are the businesses that we are talking about when we're talking about making sure that businesses are prepared for a disaster. It's not the Lear corporations that have internal safety directors. So this Ready Rating is for those businesses to make sure continuity of operations stays in place so that your clients are able to, in a disaster, go down to the corner store and get the milk and the diapers and the formula that they need in order to be able to take care of their family in the event that their community has sustained a disaster. If that store is not open, every member of that community faces a challenge and a potential critical crisis for their family. So that's what we're talking about. Those folks, those small business, 99% of the employers, most of those folks are extremely vulnerable, and most, which is approximately 2/3 or 62% of them, indicate that they don't have any emergency action plan whatsoever. So very vulnerable. Houses of worship are the exact same thing. They employ a lot of what we would call volunteer staff. They're folks that are keeping the lights on and making sure the operations are running. They're not paid, but they are running that operation for the house of worship. Very often that house of worship at that community is the connection to hope and the connection to resources when something devastating happens. So we want to make sure that they have an emergency action plan so they in turn can continue to serve their community. More than 1/5 of the US schools during a recent survey have stated that they do not have an up-to-date and or a written, practiced, demonstrated emergency action plan. That's a little scary when that's where our children are during the week, and we're hoping that, heaven forbid, something happens, they can respond correctly. But the other side of that is when we have a disaster, one of the biggest things that shows the resilience of that community is the ability to get back to normal once the disaster happens. That ability to get back to normal is being able to go back to work and go back to school. You still may have repairs at your home, you still may have a lot of issues, but getting back to school and work is a critical component in recovery. And if the school is unable to open, I may not be able to go to work because I don't have a place for my children to go during the day. It's also mentally, for mental health concerns, not the right approach. We need to make sure that the schools and office buildings are open, because mentally that's the best road to recovery as well. And then we talk about nonprofits such as ourselves. Nonprofits are 10% of the American workforce, which is 11.4 million jobs nationally. We need to keep those folks working for a couple of reasons. They need to pay their bills, they need to take care of their families, but if they're not able to go to work, they can't take care of the clients that very often don't have any resources to be able to withstand any type of disastrous situation. So these are the critical components that we're talking about when we talk about why we as community organizations and collective impact groups to support these at-risk communities need to all be prepared. We all count on each other, but we all serve in a capacity that needs to be able to remain open and remain supportive for those most at risk in these communities when something happens. So when a community is prepared for a disaster collectively, like what we're doing here, lives are saved, people suffer less, livelihoods and jobs are preserved, disaster responders are able to focus on those most at need, the more resilience we build in these communities. And every one of us needs to strive to be as prepared as possible so we can recover more effectively and efficiently. So that's the goal of what we're doing here. So the solution that we're presenting, it's not the only solution, but for most of us, it's the most cost effective, because as I said, there's not a charge to be a part of this program. There is a time investment for each and every one of the organizations that are going to utilize this tool, but the price is right. And the input with this, we're going to hear about that a little bit. The Ready rating tools meet or exceed the minimum safety standards for organizational preparedness set by the OSHA, or Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So this Ready rating program isn't the world according to the Red Cross. Some Red Crossers may want you to think that we know it all. We don't know it all. A lot of times our job is to take it from the experts like FEMA and OSHA and Department of Homeland Security. Texas A&M University has an amazing emergency management program that writes protocol for things like active shooter training. Our job is to take all of that information and put it in a place that is easily accessible and able to be utilized by organizations such as yourself to provide tools for building your own emergency action plan. The majority of everything you're going to see in this toolkit are from outside resources that are experts in that field. So you're going to see a lot of things from FEMA and OSHA and Department of Homeland Security. So just be prepared. It's not just one person's opinion. So this is from the experts. And as you can see, it's a free membership. It's all online, self-paced. All the tools are there. Everything is downloadable. And we'll talk about the customization piece. Everything is downloadable, and then it's opportunities for you to save it and then work with your team, send it out to groups in your organization for them. Most often you're going to want to create a safety or an emergency action plan committee to get a lot of this work done. So we'll see it a little bit later, but it's very customizable. So as a Ready Rating member, you're going to be able to measure your current level. So we're going to see exactly where you're at now. You're going to help your organization improve it or create. Very often you don't even have one created. And then it's going to give you whatever tools you need. You're going to be able to track your own progress. So if you have a grant that requires an emergency action plan, or if you want to speak to that as you're applying for grants within your community or your area, you're going to be able to talk about where you were and where you got to with this action plan. So it will give you a tracking on your progress. And then again, it's very achievable. It's very simple. We'll go through that a little bit. Current Ready Rating members, we've talked about this. It's your schools, it's your nonprofits, it's your houses of worship, your healthcare. One of the areas that was required recently to provide an emergency action plan in order to continue to qualify for Medicaid billing were home healthcare, like visiting nurses and home healthcare organizations. And we were able to give them this tool, and they were able to be compliant then in their emergency action planning so that they didn't lose that time frame in which they could bill Medicaid. So that was wonderful. So 93% of Ready Rating members rate the service as good or excellent. 73% of members have actually updated their preparedness. The reason we say that, very often people will log in, they'll take a look at it, and then something else happens. I am very guilty of that myself. I have a lot of sticky notes on my desk with some of the best ideas that I just have not implemented. So the goal is not to just go look at it, but actually implement it. It's, statistically 70% of Ready Rating members have educated employers or educated their employees, not just on preparedness at work, but we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to send your employees home. And keep in mind, as a Red Crosser, anytime I say employee, I also mean volunteer. Our volunteers do a lot of the work and deliver a lot of the services, as I know your organizations do as well. All of this information is shareable, and it allows us to be grateful for the work that volunteers are doing, and it gives us something that they can take home and educate their families with. So to become a Ready Rating member, very easy. You're going to enroll at the website, which is readyrating.org. You're going to accept a membership agreement. It's very simple. I agree to, utilize, the training services, as they're presented, those types of things. And then you're going to complete an organizational self-assessment to measure your current preparedness level. There's two opportunities for that. We're going to measure, the first one is called Ready Go, which is a very short 25-question assessment. It's going to be a super fast evaluation that just focuses on core functions that affect general preparedness. So it'll be in communications and in facilities and maintenance and those types of things. The Ready Advance is a more comprehensive 60-question assessment for a deeper look at your response and planning efforts. What you're going to want to do, in my opinion, my suggestion, I should say, start with the Ready Go, take a look at that and get started with it. You can change to Ready Advance at any time and go a little bit deeper, but especially if your organization has never looked at an emergency action plan, I would absolutely start with the super short Ready Go 25-question assessment to go ahead and get you started. All of the assessments are going to give you an evaluation in 5 areas. The first one is participation, and that's whether or not your organization demonstrates a commitment to improve preparedness. Emergency planning is your organization's demonstration and understanding of the most likely hazards and potential impacts, and it creates a plan of before, during, and after emergencies. Facility and equipment is going to integrate preparedness into your organizational and operational culture by ensuring that your staff is properly trained, by practicing the preparedness actions. And then we're going to talk a little bit about extended community. So the extended community is your organization demonstrating a commitment to help the wider community prepare for disasters and other emergencies. You're going to define your community based on what you consider the most relevant. So by example, I mean, do you rely on supply and distribution chains? So if I'm Meals on Wheels and I cannot serve my critical mission without food coming in my door, someone taking care of my vehicles, and someone providing the clamshells for me to pack this food and get it out to the clients, it doesn't matter how well I communicate with my staff and my volunteers, I can't serve my mission without my supply and distribution chain being intact. I'm going to make sure I'm talking to those local partners in my supply and distribution chain to make sure they have an emergency action plan. I know what theirs is, they know what mine is. So when we do have an issue like COVID where people aren't engaging or there's a stay-at-home order, we may not be essential. How do we get and move materials? So that may be your critical piece. Your critical piece may strictly be employees and their families, or it may be the local schools that the employees' children attend. We need to make sure that's up and running. But those are the things we need to be prepared for, and we need to start looking at through these assessment sections. So this is just a visual look, and we're going to actually get into this a little bit later. This is what the assessment looks like. So when we go into the assessment, it's just going to start asking, I don't know if you can see Erica, is my cursor on the screen? Can you see that? Okay. So very, very quickly, the very first question here under that participation, as we said, it went into 5 categories. The first one is participation. You demonstrate a commitment to be prepared. So the first question is, the safety of our staff and clients is our top priority. You're going to answer yes or no to that. If you have not done an emergency action plan yet, and you have not put the steps in place, you may want to consider answering no. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because you wouldn't be here if the safety of your staff and clients is your top priority, but top priority means that action has been taken to do something about it. The only reason I'm suggesting you may want to click the no button is for everything you answer no to, when we get to the next steps report, which is what's going to generate once you complete this assessment, in that next steps report, it's going to give you a link to all kinds of resources that are going to help you fulfill that category in which you answered no and said that you were not prepared for. So the only reason I'm saying if you're questioning if you should go yes or no, always answer no, because then in the next steps report, it's going to give you links to resources right there in that report. You'll see what that looks like in a minute. But real quick, this little video box right here, when you hover over that on your screen, when you're in the website, that's just going to give you a link to some type of resource. In this case, the little video means it's going to take you to a short little video to explain that question a little bit more. So we're going to see links in other areas. But that's all it means. It's just going to take you to additional resources. So the next piece, as we already talked about, once you complete your assessment, is it's going to provide the next steps report, which is customized to your answers in your organization. And the next steps report takes each assessment line, those 5 assessment lines that we talked about, where you did not achieve so anywhere in the assessment section that you said no to, and it's going to provide you an overview with why it's important, and then it's going to provide recommendations to the resource center tools that will help your organization complete that objective and increase your ready rating assessment score in that category. So hence the reason you may want to answer no, especially if you're on the fence and you're unsure. You can always go back and update it once you know, oh, I've seen all the resources. We actually were in better shape than we thought. Not a bad idea to provide a little bit of a refresher. So ready rating members are going to improve their assessment scores by completing those recommended steps and linking to those tools and resources on a regular basis. So this is a snapshot of this ready rating next steps report. I'm going to go ahead again and show it to you live when we're done. This basically just tells me I'm on page 4. I'm in section 2, which again, we have 5 assessment sections. Section 2 was emergency planning. Question 9, my organization answered no to, and it says the Emergency Response Planning Committee meets at least quarterly. We said no, that's false, we don't do that. It's going to tell you why that's very important. It had to be formed, it needs to have a regular schedule. Somebody should be taking notes and sending out and discussing for, seasonal meetings. And then here are some of the resources. This one is someone talking and presenting information, and it's going to provide a link to an online assessment piece or online resource piece. And then these two are both videos. This will have a document attached to it, and these are videos of resources that apply directly to your emergency response planning committee. So that's what you're going to find in your next steps report. We also have something called the Ready Rating Resource Center. So the Ready Rating Resource Center has valuable tools and information that help achieve each topic. Again, if you remember, we had the 5, and it's broken down into those same categories in the Resource Center. So some examples of the resources you might find are hazard vulnerability assessments. So where am I the most vulnerable? So it's going to have another link to what are the most pressing hazards for my organization. It's going to provide quick drills for things like floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, how to shelter in place, how to evacuate the building, active shooter training, active shooter situations. It will provide, we're going to see that in the Resource Center in a little bit. It's not going to provide just information on it. It's going to actually give you all of the information you need for the drills to work with your team and all of the resources to present and actually carry those out. It's going to give you emergency contact cards, an overview of an incident command system should it pivot higher to your organization or a community group in a higher disaster response protocol. It's going to provide media training for your staff. So those are just some of the resources that are included. And then the Resource Center also contains more than 70 actionable resources that help members with their action plans, including how to write their emergency action plans, actual job descriptions that are included in the plans themselves, and then reports. So you're not recreating anything. Anytime this resource asks you to provide a log for anybody who attended the emergency planning meeting, it's going to give you a link to a template to sign in for that meeting. So there's really no guessing involved. All of the tools and lists are here. It's also going to give you all of your checklists, any sample form. It's going to give you slide deck presentations for drills and presenting to other members of your organization or external partners that we already talked about. And then it's also going to give you those white papers, which is kind of that core syllabus on if I'm going to do an active shooter training, or if I'm going to do an evacuation training in this facility. The white paper is just going to kind of be the training document to walk you through the pre-planning of that event. All of that is included in the Resource Center. This is, again, just a screenshot of the Resource Center. And again, it goes into those categories we talked about. There's 5, the preparedness or participation, emergency planning, facility equipment. So here is just an overview of, managing the media when we're talking about working at our facility. It talks about evacuation assembly areas when we're talking about emergency planning. So it just, again, breaks it down into the 5 simple categories, but then there's also extensive ones past this that we'll review when we go to the Resource Center. As we talked about, you're going to see a lot of links to the videos in a lot of these categories. The Ready Rating resource videos are topics on emergency preparedness, but they're given by experts in the field. So if you see, Erica Voss here was the emergency manager, previous emergency manager at Microsoft, and she's going to talk about her time at Microsoft and how she prepared and set up her emergency response team. And Dr. Tom Kirsch is the director in the National Center for Disaster Medicine and Public Health. He's going to talk to you about how to conduct an evacuation. The fact that they're wearing a Red Cross shirt is strictly because it's a Red Cross resource. these, as we talked about earlier, are those experts in the field that are going to give you the best information possible. It just happens to be in the delivery format of a Red Cross resource. So emergency action plan template, that's really what we're here for. That's the meat of what we're going to do. So we first went through the assessment. We've answered our either 25 questions or our 60 questions. Then it gave us our next steps report. So our next steps report talked to us about what we needed to do, where we answered no or said true or false. We run the false side. So it told us the areas that we needed to have more concentration in, where we needed to spend a little bit more time. But once we're done taking a look at all of that, we're going to look at the opportunity to now create an emergency action plan template. And it's going to allow us to easily create a customized template that fits our organization's needs. And it's going to come from either our EASY, EAP, Emergency Action Plan, Go template, which is that one that we said we did the 25 questions. We started on that simpler form. This is going to address the minimum OSHA requirements for the organization. You will be in compliant. It's going to be standardized, higher level, not as detailed, because we did the higher level 25 questions. So that's an EAP, Emergency Action Plan Go template. Or we can go to the Emergency Action Plan Advanced template. That's going to allow us to choose up to 70 additional topics that allow us to get into a lot more detail. And it's also going to allow us to be a lot more, customizable to our organization's needs, because we're going to be able to go in and pick what 70 additional topics we want to focus on. We may have an area where we've got hazardous material and we want to figure out a way to lock that out, right? For emergency action. That's not going to be addressed up here. It's not a minimum, but it might be down here. So when you get, I would always recommend, let's start with the Go side. At any time, as you're walking through this, you can automatically jump to the advanced. Once you feel a little bit comfortable walking here, we can go run down here and start adding things to our emergency action plan, because this is going to really be able to create a customized report for your organization. Both templates can be exported to your computer for final customization, and every organization and facility should have a written emergency action plan. Facilities with 10 employees or more are required by OSHA to make a written emergency action plan available to all employees. Does OSHA go out and meet with organizations that have 12 employees and say, show me your written plan? No, they do not. They've got a lot more on their plate. But that is an OSHA requirement, and it needs to be posted somewhere. And let's face it, it just makes good sense. So to be in compliance, we need to be creating these action plans, and we need to be reviewing them and making them available to our employees. We should be training them. We should be hosting evacuation trainings on a scheduled basis. So just keep that in mind to make sure that we are not just writing it and putting it on a shelf and nobody knows where to find it. The other thing I would encourage folks to consider, we're a different animal than most, being in this nonprofit sector, where you'll notice this little word called employees. You know, a lot of our nonprofits, and especially our faith-based organizations, do not have technically employees. We can't fund administrative costs for everyone, right? So our frontline workers very often are volunteers. Don't get hung up on that word employees. How many people do you need to run your organization? So I would encourage you to just kind of eliminate that word employee. It's how many people are you utilizing to carry out your mission. So again, this is just a visual of this emergency action plan. This again is super customizable. We're going to talk about it a little bit more when we get, I'll show you where to find it. But here's an opportunity where when we say it's customizable, it's very simple as, do I want to include or omit incident severity levels? Do I want to include or omit life-threatening emergencies? So this is where we can go ahead and include them or not include them in our plan and make them really specific for our organization, because we want to be focused on the things that are most impactful to us. The things that don't pertain to us, we'd rather just eliminate from the plan. We don't want to spend any time even looking at that. So, and again, as we talked about, you have that opportunity to go into additional. As you can see, this is at EAP Advance. You're not going to get these opportunities. There's 70 of these. You're not going to get this opportunity in that EAP Go, that shorter emergency action plan. Some of the things that are included in here that you're not seeing would be your shelter in place procedures, your data and vital records. That's a big deal right now during COVID. Where is all of that kept? Do we have access to all of that? First person on-site action checklist. That's very important right now during COVID. First person on site doesn't necessarily mean the very first person right after a disaster, let's say a hurricane comes through, who goes to check the facility. It could be, but it also could be first person on site action checklist. We're in the middle of COVID and people need to be screened to come through our door. First person on site, what do they need to do to make sure that facility is ready to receive clients during COVID check-ins? Okay, so that again is part of that EAP Advance, some of those other things that we can pick from. So when you first sign on to Ready Rating, we're going to see the website in just a minute. When you first sign on, you're going to get your dashboard. It's going to allow each member of your organization to see and view its activity. It's going to give you your current score, your next steps report. It's just going to give you a list and a click through absolutely every single link that you have. It's going to be sitting right here when you log in. It's going to welcome you. It's going to give you this information. I can go right to, I can't, sorry, it's a little bit further down. I can go right down here to my next steps report. It's going to be down here. There's a link. And then whatever the featured resources are, some of the featured resources right now are on COVID related items. As we pivot more towards hurricane season, you're going to start seeing, we're in it now, but as we start seeing more activity, you might see more sheltering in place and or evacuation pieces down there. So the featured resources down here just happens to be, what the most current need nationally might be, just a suggestion to check it out. I don't know that we have a lot of tiered organizations that are utilizing this resource right now in our area, and I don't think I heard folks on the call, but the beauty of that is it allows for organizations that want to have separate accounts for different facilities and locations. So for instance, on the registration, I did see someone from the City of Gary. City of Gary may have different operational areas, may not be facilities, it might be operational units. So one might be communications, one might be facility maintenance, those types of things. It might be physical locations. If we have, I'll just pick on the YMCA. YMCA has one organization. Actually, I'll pick on Boys and Girls Club of Northwest Indiana because they just went through this consolidation. So they've got one organization with different campuses, different sites for it. So they may want the organization to have a Ready Rating account, but then each facility will have their own. This would be the Boys and Girls Club of Valparaiso. This would be the Boys and Girls Club in Hammond. So each facility then is going to have their own site with all of their specific information, but then it's going to be linked to the Boys and Girls Club of Northwest Indiana, or Boys and Girls Clubs of Northwest Indiana, so it all rolls up. So it allows for multi-location with one administrative account, which is nice for those larger organizations. Member communications, this is just something that you're going to get on a quarterly basis. You're going to get a quarterly newsletter with related preparedness topics. We're getting ready. We actually just did the hurricane assessment. The next one you're going to see is going to be on winter weather, believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe looking outside today, but that's the next quarterly run. So it's going to just talk about preparedness. It'll have, if you can see down here, my cursor keeps cutting out. You're going to see little blue links all over this. This is a great tool to then send out to your staff, send out to your community partners, send out to your extended external partners, your supply chain folks, and just go, hey, just got this new thing. Just wanted to send it along, tips and tricks on how to be more prepared coming into the next quarter. So those are just member communications that are going to come out. We've already talked about benefits of joining. You know, the information and the ability to make your facility and your people, whether it's your clients, your volunteers, your staff, extended service partners, you know, it just, you know, things like, you know, your Ready Rating member seal, that's great to have a seal in the window and let people know you've taken the steps. but just knowing that you've done your job and prepared as much as you can for the folks that are counting on you. And let's not forget, all of this also goes into continuity of operations, because we want to do whatever we can to keep the doors open, to keep the lights on, to keep clients being able to be served. And this is all allowing us to do that, because if we can't serve our clients, the clients are even in a tougher spot. So, you know, that for me is the driving factor behind Ready Rating. These are just some of the highlights. As of May of 2020, we've got, you know, 15,500 Ready Rating members. We've talked through these numbers already and the scores and what's happening. So it's a huge opportunity, but you have to utilize the tool. So we're going to jump into that now. And again, we'll go through this. This will all be in the packet that comes out, or the PDF that comes out, to tell you where to go to readyrating.org to sign up. But for now, we're going to go visit the website unless there's immediate questions. We're going to view the next steps report and a few links, and then look at one of the drills, and then we'll be wrapped up with this presentation. And then again, if somebody needs me one-on-one, we can go from there. So any questions so far through the material? All right. I'm going to take that silence as a no. So we're going to go ahead and jump to my Ready Rating page. So let's go into my welcome. I just had it up. Do I need to go back to, bear with me, I might need to go back here. Oh, come on, move out of my way. All right, are you seeing welcome to your dashboard, Kristen?
No, we're seeing a folder
okay,
with your
gotcha.
files in there.
Okay, gotcha. Let me see if I can't. Let's see if how about that?
Yes.
All right, good, good, good. All right, here we go. So this is the dashboard. I've already signed in. We've already done our assessment, and I answered no to each and every question because I wanted an opportunity in this next steps report to see each and every resource that's available. So you're going to see Kristen Marlowe at the Red Cross has a Ready Rating assessment of 0. I've done nothing. I am not prepared, and I have absolutely no interest in being, apparently, because I answered no to every single question. But what it gives me is the opportunity to go right down here to our next steps report and jump right into what are all the resources available. So, and then do you guys remember earlier in the presentation when I showed you that there'd be links down here, and I said these featured resources are going to be what's most prevalent and what's most pressing. So as you can see, the top 2 resources right now are updates for organization on resources for COVID. So it might be updates for organizations. It might be a link to a checklist for reopening. It might be a link for screening stations and different things. So these are all the most pressing. Click here to view all resources. You're going to be able to go directly to the resource center. And this is just going to give you a list of absolutely everything that we talked about. We're going to go through that in the page for a minute, but this just puts things front and center. And then this is just steps to help prevent against. So again, the featured resources, just checking into Ready Rating on a regular basis just to see what new resources are out there because they're the most pressing right now. So we're going to be able to go right to our next steps report. When I click on that, it's going to take a minute. It actually bogs down. Let me back out of that. I actually have it up. Let me share another screen because it's all driven. I actually have it up here. All right, are you seeing question 10? All right, great. So this is my next steps report. I just saved it as a PDF, and I apologize for that, trying to get to that link. It's a beast because if you look, every single one of these, I answered false to the question 7, an emergency response team has been formed to help implement the emergency response plan. I said we did not do that. So question 7 has 6 links for me. And one of them is a video on just ongoing training for the ERT, which is this emergency response team. The Red Cross loves its acronyms. We're going to give you an acronym for everything. It's going to talk to you about how to staff the emergency response team, how to recruit the safety wardens, how to form it, what's their responsibility. It's going to give you the checklist of their responsibility, and it's also going to give you a link to all of their job descriptions. So as I said earlier, there's going to be links to absolutely everything. So I'll just click on this right now. It's going to take me to a document. There's more than one. So it's going to give me a link. Here are all of our job descriptions for every role in that position. And then it's going to let me just quickly download those so I have them and I can print them out and share them or save them on a desktop. So that is how the Resource Center works. Let me close that out. That's how the Resource Center works, and that's how that next steps report works. So I won't go into too much detail. I just wanted you guys to see how easy it is. Once you go in, there's really no, there's really nothing left unassigned when you come into the next steps report, because it links you to absolutely everything. But let's go back. The last thing I wanted to show you was just this general Resource Center. So this Resource Center, as we said, had a participation in all 5 categories. I'm sorry. I was looking for a sticky note. So it's in all 5 categories again: participation, emergency planning, facilities, equipment, training and exercises, and then the extended community. You can view all. It allows you to expand out. What I just want to show you now, we're just going to visit something really simple. We're going to see a drill and an exercise. We're going to go to facilities and equipment, and we're going to go to how to conduct a drill, because that's one of the things we need to learn. We need to start doing some facilities drills to be compliant with our emergency action plan on some of the drills that we're doing.
Kristen, so, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're still on this PDF.
Oh, I am so sorry. I'm glad you shared. I am sorry. Let me go back. My bad. It takes me and I forget I don't jump in with you guys on the training. I apologize. Let me get back out of here. Okay, are we on resource topics? Do you see resource topics and participation? I am so sorry, folks.
Yes,
I'm so glad you said something.
Yes, yeah, and thank you for catching that.
Yeah, wonderful. So, so we're in this resource center, and one of the things that we're struggling with is we know we have to do a few drills in our facilities, and one of the drills we may need to do is, you know, evacuation of the facility. You know, we just got notice that we've got somebody that tested positive for COVID. We want to clear the facility as quick as we can. So we want to start doing non-emergency based evacuations. We want everybody out of the building as quick as we can, if that's our scenario. So we're going to go ahead and do how to conduct a drill. So now it takes us to how to conduct a drill, what resources are available, and then again, we can go ahead and download everything. It's just a quick checklist to help us prepare and develop and execute a drill. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the documents that it's allowing us. Make sure, are you still seeing me? Are you watching me open a Word document? Great. So here's the Word document. Oh, every time I try and go up, it stops me from. Let me expand this a bit. All right, so you guys can see how to conduct a drill here, right? All right, so if we scroll down, it's going to tell you you're going to use this checklist, you're going to review this documentation, you're going to provide this type of drill. This is going to be your status: yes, done, no, completed. You're going to provide your scenario, the logistics piece of how to do it, what's the location, who are the meeting invitees, how are you going to actually conduct a drill, ensure the room is set up, and then anytime there is an additional resource. So this is pretty set forward. You know, you're going to review the agenda, the ground rules, all of these things are going to be done. Now keep in mind, this is how to conduct a drill. If you are doing an active shooter drill, there's a whole nother set of resources for all of that. So the active shooter drill is going to provide you with the agenda. and the ground rules and the objectives. This is just the overview of how are you going to do it? Are we all set up? Do we have all of this? So this is your pre-walkthrough checklist on how to conduct a drill. And then anytime there's an action item required, there's going to go ahead and be another link. So here it says, after you're done with this drill, you're going to complete an after action report. And the after action report should include date and time of drill, participants, goals and objectives. Well, right here is a link for our after action plan. So let me go click on it because they're all connectable. Even downloading as a PDF, all of these links are still live and active. And then here's your sample after action report, your downloadable version, so you can download it and save it. And these are just all tools that you're going to be able to give to whoever is the lead of your committee or whoever's conducting things. Here you go. Everything's all done. They check it all off. They fill it out and put it in your emergency action plan binder. So I tried to pick a simple one that didn't have a lot of meat to it, because all you need to do is see how it connects the dots and how it walks you through how to do all of these options. If anybody would like to see anything a little bit more detailed, I'm happy to show you. But just kind of seeing how everything comes together. You know, for instance, we can take a look at the active shooter training. It does show, this is your white paper, this is your presentation. It literally has everything here that you will need to go through and conduct this in your facility. Let me show you real quick. I did promise you that we had a link should you want to, here we go. As you're doing things in your facility. So here is the active shooter training presentation. So if you look at it, it says active shooter training PowerPoint. So if you were going in your facility to do an active shooter training, you wanted folks to be able to walk through where to go and what to do, and you want to prepare them first, you're going to do an active shooter presentation to your team. It provides you with that PowerPoint. And what it's going to give you is a couple of red screens in the very beginning. Are you guys seeing a red slide that says using this presentation? Do you guys see that? Let me make it bigger so you see the whole slide. So it basically, the first two in red basically just says, and I'll pick on, since I used YMCA earlier, I'll pick on the YMCA today. So YMCA organization, this presentation has been designed to individuals in your organization on how they can prepare, respond, and assist during and after an active shooter event. So the YMCA would be presenting this to their staff, to their board of directors, to anybody that's going to be a part of that training. And then these slide numbers have a red banner on the left, and it's telling the organization that they need to be customized for their use. So it may be just implementing your organization's name. It may be implementing and adding, we're going to go to this designated area. But every one of these slideshow presentations is going to give you all of the information you need. So all you're going to do is walk through the presentation. It even has the notes underneath. So as you're walking through this presentation, you're not just showing slides and making it up. It's going to have all of the information that you need in the notes portion, right? And here it's going to tell you, speaker note, use this slide if your organization has an EAP. This is one of those slides, number 10. This is where you have to put whether you do or do not have it. It calls out every bit of customization for you guys to be able to go ahead, take these tools, utilize the links, put your name and customization on it, and create a safer environment for your organization. All of these tools are included in that resource center. Let me go back to that. So, and then again, resource center has resources in all of those five areas, and you can link to each individual one, or you can go off of your next steps report, which will link you to the things you specifically said you needed help with. So that is it in a nutshell. I know that's a ton of information. So now would be the time if anybody has any very specific questions. I know that's a lot of information. This is one of those tools that you really just need to get in and start messing with.
And so before we get into questions, we will be sending out information on how to access the Ready rating system, and along with Kristen's information, so that you can follow up directly with any questions or anything specifically, that you have while working on it. But if you have any questions regarding the presentation, now would be the time to, go ahead and feel free to either unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. Do any organizations already have an emergency preparedness plan?
Kelly, our organization is working on one. We're required to have one for NTD.
Okay.
National Transit requires us to have one that's coming up due in just a few weeks. So we've been working on one to have it in place.
Okay.
No,
good.
this is Blossom, by the way. I could not introduce myself before because I was on my computer, which speakers aren't well. So now I'm on my iPad and I can talk to you and see everyone. So
Good. Well, hopefully some of the resources that are available through the Ready rating system will help you as you finalize and develop your plan.
yes, I think that it will. Thank you, Kristen.
You are welcome. Yeah, and guys, I know we went through a lot and at a very high level. Some of the disasters we're going to talk about, it just may be a down tree and you can't get to your office that day and there's still work that needs to be done. So some of it is very simple, and it's very it's simple after the fact. When I'm the one, unfortunately, that gets to that tree and goes, shoot, I need a file that I don't have, or I don't have everybody's phone number that I need to call for this meeting. So it's the awareness to say, before that tree falls, let's make sure. And I will tell you, COVID is the only thing that caused me to utilize my OneDrive and my SharePoint. I was a desktopper on, you didn't see the vast amount of files that I normally have. It has caused me to be much more cognizant of, where do I keep my data? Where do I keep my information? We just had a situation this week where we had a lot of folks, we still have a lot of folks without power. And, when you're out of power and you're like, oh, I got a laptop, it's fine. Well, that's good for a few hours, but do you have a backup to charge your laptop? So one of the things we're talking about, with this virtual environment, with folks being at home, it's not always the power, because the power typically is on. But during COVID, what we found, because the storm hit Monday night, what we found on Tuesday with Red Cross staff members and lead volunteers that were on their laptops doing all of these client caseworks, we have folks in shelters right now. In Lake County, we have folks in what we call non-congregate shelters for COVID restrictions, because they can't be home. They have functional needs and they can't be home because there's no power or electricity or gas. So volunteers are helping them, and we're giving them financial assistance, and we're going out and checking on them. Their laptop is dead because they don't have power at home either. Well, guess where they normally go for that? They go to a coffee shop. Well, coffee shops are either not open, or due to social distancing requirements, they don't have enough ports for everybody to charge their phones. So we all of a sudden realized that our staff and our volunteers don't quite have the portable power sources they need to sustain them 48 hours through a disaster. We as the Red Cross are just learning that, because we didn't have this we had power outages before, but they could always drive to a coffee house. Well, now we can't even drive out of the power outage to get to a coffee house because COVID hit. So those are some of the little things that causes you to think about and make small adjustments to your organizational operations to stay open and be able to continue to serve clients.
That's the thing about disasters, is that they're always challenging us to think about something. And I think no matter how much you plan, there's always going to be something, a scenario that comes up, or something that maybe you didn't necessarily plan on, or a way that something worked out differently. But having that plan is critical to at least being able to have that foundation for the first steps of, how do you respond without setting it back, what you're doing in your operations back too much. So
Kelly, we had that situation. So I don't know if you folks remember, we had quite a few apartment fires strung together at the Park West Apartments. Some pretty significant. The first had a fatality and some injuries to some firefighters. The second had 34 units displaced, and that was right during New Year's. That was December 31st that happened, or December 30th. So we had folks in shelters over the holiday, which meant organizations and connection to resources were closed. And then we had a third apartment fire there in February. So this apartment complex, when we went and met them in November for that first fire, we had a conversation with them about ready rating. And we said, you know, because they didn't have the documentation we needed to connect to clients quickly. They did not have a spreadsheet that had all the clients, all of their residents by unit for each building. They had no way to get that information. They were hunting and pecking, and they just had a general register, right? We needed to know who was in this building because we had to connect with those clients right away, and we needed a valid, up-to-date phone number to see if they had a place to go, to see if they needed immediate financial assistance for formula or diaper. What was their situation? They did not have that in November. Unfortunately, when they had that fire in December, it was unfortunate that they had the fire, but property management took that one small suggestion through ready rating, and within an hour of being on site at that apartment building, we had a full list of every client that was in that building with up-to-date accurate phone numbers. We wouldn't have had that if they hadn't have implemented that from the month before. So I give them a ton of credit for taking the steps, but those are the things that we're talking about. Those small steps make a big difference in serving these clients effectively and quickly.
good example. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kristen. We really appreciate it. This was a lot of good information, and based on the comments, it looks like everybody's looking forward to starting to dig into the website and getting their plans together. So you'll probably be hearing from some people as they start working through their plans.
Yeah, please reach out. Like I said, Kelly's going to send that. I'm going to send her the PDF right now. Please reach out, even if you just want me to sit with you while you get it started, because you're just going to try, you know, it's, again, no charge. You're going to get started answering some questions. Give me a call. I'm happy to help. And share it with your network. You know, Melissa, you talked about the church. You know, please ask your pastor if he could share it at his next, if he's part of a ministerial alliance. Let every pastor know this is something every church should have an opportunity to pull these free resources to make sure that their congregation, this is something they can send home with their congregants to talk about, you know, safety at home. So, you know, the more folks we talk about, the more resilient and prepared our community is. So I appreciate you guys spreading the word.
It is. It's a great tool, and it's a great resource that we have available to us. And as Kristen mentioned, for free. So
free, for free to you, not free.
Right. Somebody's paying.
We thank our national donors for bringing this to you guys, but definitely we appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you all. Have a good evening.